Happy afternoon, y'all. It's Kathryn back at Lent at Lunch. Today, my guest is Dr. Larry Mittnell. He is a child and adolescent psychiatrist and has a lot of wisdom to share about managing anxiety, depression, mental health, and all the things. Plus, he's a dad, so he has all the things to share with y'all. So I'm excited to share him with you, his expertise. I think that you're going to love him. So let me grab him on here, and then we'll get going. Hi, Dr. Larry.
Hi, Kathryn. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. I'm so excited that you host this and that we're getting a chance to talk in real time.
Oh, it's awesome. You're on spring break, right?
Yes, I am. I am. So, which actually, probably I do like what most parents do, which is I plan most of the week around work still. I'm taking today off, thankfully. So that was kind of a last minute. I need some of that time, to steal it and be a little bit selfish. So yeah. So
Well,
thank you for reaching out.
no, I will only take just a few minutes because I know that your time is precious and people are still eating lunch. So I want to be honored that.
Okay.
So I was just bragging about you and telling people a little bit about you. But for those people who are new here who have no idea who Dr. Larry Mittnell is, what would you tell them?
Sure. I guess I'd say, I'm the dad of five, first and foremost, and married to the love of my life, and grateful for that gift. But also, in my time spent from Monday through Friday, mostly, I'm seeing kids in my clinic. So I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'm seeing kids typically from 5 to 18, 19, for a range of concerns from autism to anxiety, ADHD, depression, that sort of thing, and trying to infuse in that, not just addressing kind of the symptoms of those things, but hopefully steering families to a place of living kind of the virtues together and being closer and better connected. I think that's the hope of our world and our civilization, is to know the Lord, but to live that out in family life too, and bring some peace to that. So anyway, that's me.
That is exactly why I had you on here. So I think I read correctly. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. That initially you were going to go into pediatric surgery,
That's
and
right.
then you became a child psychiatrist.
That's
So
right.
how
That's
do,
right.
how does one go from pediatric surgery interest to psychiatry?
A lot of prayer and discernment, and thankfully some guidance along the way. I mean, I think people who follow me know I love to use my hands. I grew up as a drummer. My dad's a drummer, so I just thought, all right, I'm going to put together kind of all the things. Liking and being with people, I enjoy using my hands, and then helping them to live a better life. And during med school, I actually saved psychiatry for the end because I thought it'd be interesting, but it wasn't going to be kind of my deal or the thing that I'm excited about. And I got randomly put in a child and adolescent psychiatry clinic, and I loved it. I thought, I didn't realize there was an opportunity to sit with families, to do something transformational, without actually having to poke or prod or set a line or put them under, anesthesia. And not that those things aren't wonderful and great. I am grateful that, that medicine and kind of science exists. But this really spoke to everything. And probably at the heart of things too, I think, I'm kind of childlike. I try not to be childish. And the opportunity to just stay in that world and meet kids where they are, and talk about anxiety and superheroes at the same time. It's a pretty special place. So that's kind of how I made my way there.
No, our family. So I have a kiddo who's a preemie,
Okay.
and we spent a lot of time with a lot of surgeons. But because of his experience, it dramatically affected my other children. So he's the fifth one.
Okay.
And we spent some time getting to know some psychiatrists and some psychologists. And so we have been on both sides of that. And I know what a gift you can be to families. So for those families who have a child who is struggling with what they believe to be anxiety or depression or some sort of mental health issue, what would be your best advice to them to figure out, is this something that we can maintain and work on in our own home, or when do we need to reach out and ask for professional help?
Good, good. That's actually maybe the perfect way in, which is, I think there are so many things that can be worked on within the family system. And really the biggest functional divide is, how is that affecting their world? So Here's an example. So if a child is struggling with worry and anxiety, and you can see that, hey, through just some additional attention and focus, maybe connecting with some really good mentors, maybe, gently nudging or pushing your child to try some things that they feel like are dangerous and that they can't handle, or that the world is going to swallow them up if they step on stage or if they stand in front of a class. But you're able to see that, again, through time, through coaching, through kind of loving support, that you're able to kind of move in the right direction, and it's not inhibiting them from doing the things that really are their passions, doing the things that really make them alive. Then I think, okay, those are the things situated for fitted for the family to kind of work on and figure out together. However, if a child is struggling to the extent that, you just can't get them to school no matter what you do, or that fear is really just a block to their lives, to joining in to things that would really nourish their soul. That's the time when it's that's when it's time to reach out and ask for some extra guidance. And that guidance, I think families are often kind of scared of what that might mean. Does that mean my child necessarily has to be on medications? No, not necessarily. Does that mean that my child is going to be in therapy for the rest of their lives? Like, no. But it may be really helpful to, ask your pediatrician first, what's going on. They might evaluate just to make sure there's some, medical problems related to, nutrition or diet or hormones that can also mimic some things that make us worry about depression or anxiety. So making sure that, under the hood, that things are kind of looking the way that they should. And then, if there's something beyond that, then the next step is typically therapy for young kids to, kind of connect, or helping the family be better coaches around behaviors or struggles that a particular child is having.
So what do you think the biggest mistake is that parents, I'll put myself as the example here.
You don't make mistakes, so I won't have any for you, but.
I like you already. So what's the biggest misstep that you think parents make when they're trying to help their kids?
Yeah. I think, one is the assumption that your child isn't trying at this or trying to make this better, right? And again, we're all guilty of that to some extent and at times and places. And certainly there are times when our children just, we know they're not giving it their all. I've stepped over those socks 4 times. Better. You can see it. I know that you can see it, But I think, it's not uncommon that in those initial, visits that I might have with the family, that when they learn, the range at which your child is struggling is really larger than what we would expect based on age or development or kind of where they are, experiences in life. And so they are going to need some additional support. And I think sometimes, parents have felt a little bit of guilt at saying, man, I told them to buck up. I told them to just suck it up and move on, or to, try a little bit harder. So I think, if you can be kind of present and open to the struggles of your child, see if there are some valid concerns there, and see what it would look like. What would it look like if I supported their thought that, there's something about this that's a little extra hard? How would we treat that?
Yeah, I mean, I think every parent can probably say there's been a time that they told their kids, just try harder or just do this thing. And then you look back and you're like, and you feel like a horrible person. But you also know that we're human, right? And we make mistakes. And sometimes there's been times that people are like, oh, you need to get your kid professional help. And you're like, nope, I know my kid. And you're right. So it's a balance of being able to forgive yourself, but also knowing when to reach out. So if someone's looking for a good psychiatrist, Dr. Larry, what would your suggestion be? What are some things that they should look for? Because the last thing that you would want to do is to go seek help for your child and then for it to be a horrible, wounding experience and make the problem even worse.
Absolutely. So one is, as the parent, I trust your gut. So your child best and the fit and the style that's going to work best too. And so you don't have to feel like, well, this is the expert. I just have to, follow all the things that they say. Now, again, do I want people to follow my great advice for them and their families? Absolutely, I do. But, you know, I try not to balk at, you know, any pushback where parents are really, and often it's not pushback, it's just clarification. You know, what is, in your view, you know, virtuous living for my teen? You know, are you going to be okay with them smoking, you know, this or that and not telling their parent? Or is that something that you're going to, you know, that you think is such a serious thing in terms of keeping secrets from families, and that has something to do with how they connect and how they attach? You know, what are the sticking points for you? What's the vision of, you know, the family and how that works, and how you think that we can help best kind of support our child thriving? So I think one is, you know, being okay with any red flags in your gut, and that's okay to kind of say to the person that you're seeing. And then you can sometimes dig a little bit deeper. Again, you probably don't want the whole conversation to be about what are your, you know, core beliefs and how do you practice, but I think it is valid to say, hey, you know, and if my child is struggling with, you know, being a little bit more scrupulous, I want to be sure that the solution isn't avoid church altogether, because that's not our family value. So can you support us in helping our child to find victory while also keeping intact the things that we think are most important to help them be the adult that God has called them to be?
That's really good advice. All right, so now I'm going to put you to the test, because social
All right.
media. Okay, so I have one college kid, 3 teenagers. So I have a freshman, a junior, and a senior in high school. So social media is a big topic. I know. Wow.
Yes. Yeah, you're in the thick of it. Yes.
But also have a middle schooler and an elementary school kid. So we run the whole gamut.
Okay, good.
So social media can be a great tool, but I also know that it can be incredibly anxiety inducing for adolescents. So what is your, what's your take on introducing kids to social media in a way that's healthy and not harmful? And then if it does become harmful, how do you help them fix it? I know that's a huge question, and we could have a whole discussion about that, but
that is big. Yeah. So here's some kind of guideposts that I like to think about or have families think about and use. One is, you know, thinking about, you know, phones, iPads, all those things as tools, right? And all throughout the development of our children, you know, our goal is really not to inhibit them from using appropriate tools. You know, son, I don't want to stop you from using the lawnmower, but if I can't trust that you're not going to stick your shoe under there, or, you know, turn it on its side and not be sure that your little sister's walking behind there while you're mowing the lawn, okay, then I can't trust you with it, right? And so I think that same paradigm can be helpful in thinking about how we use technology. Technology is a tool. So my question as a parent is, how mature is my child? Do they seem ready, right? And so I'll tell parents, you know, there's a really good reason why we've decided that, you know, 9 and 10-year-olds aren't ready to drive cars, because, you know, while some might have good hand-eye coordination, the risks of the maturity level and the ability to self-inhibit are really, really limited. So in terms of, you know, social media in general, you know, it really is the Autobahn. There is, you know, people are flying at whatever speed they want to fly, and showing things that, you know, that many times are actually like offensive weapons against the things that you're trying to share with your child or trying to influence them. And so in thinking about what's the right age, what's the right amount, one, how mature is your child, and in being able to handle themselves. How do they do when they're given tasks that aren't directly under your supervision, and you know that, you know, you get reports from the neighbor that, you know, he was helping the neighbor with groceries after mowing the lawn. Okay, that child is showing me some things, showing me some ability to be responsible. The other is, even with responsible children, humans are humans, right? So the proclivity to get into something that's beyond your capacity to take on, or, I mean, we know that as adults that, you know, there are things that we know we can maybe handle in moderation, but the temptation is, I want that second bag of Cheetos, you know, I want that next glass of wine. I mean, again, none of those objectively bad, but they have limits. And so often, because our teenagers, because our young people don't yet have the tools to kind of self-inhibit those things, parents are the guardians. Really, you set the guardrails just as you would with, is it appropriate to use the knife now, or is it appropriate to allow them to use the gas stove? I mean, that same level of attention to where are you, how are you using it, how much time are you spending on it? I think those things are kind of important. And then to the extreme of, if you find yourselves in the weeds and whatever, children are accessing, pornography, whatever it is, okay, we need to, I think that is a good time to press pause. And Lent is the perfect time to do that if people haven't already thought about that too. And not to press pause as a punitive thing, although our teenagers often feel it like that, or even younger kids will feel it that way. Yeah. But I think what you'll find is, one, in the emptiness that exists, the place that was previously occupied by the technology and social media, there have probably been some things that have been lost along the way. So some of the main things that I see that are lost, one is kind of connection to the parents. So often, that time spent actually, in its absence, it gets redirected to the parents, so they're aligning a little bit better. Some of the things that kids really like to do in the real world, so some of the hobbies, that Casio keyboard in the closet that no one's touched for the last 3 years, the guitar, the bow and arrow that you bought them for Christmas 2 years ago. All of a sudden, these things that seemed a little less attractive because you had a full library and all the movies in the world at your disposal, now actually look reasonable. They look like things that you want to devote some time to. So it's okay. It's okay to push pause. They may go through a withdrawal period to do that. And then to rethink about, all right, based on what I'm seeing now, again, what's the developmental level? How much can they take? How much can I trust them to do? And then grow from there.
Well, and you actually spoke to something that I think is really the underlying issue, is that finding ways to connect with our kids. And
yes.
At least it's something that I see as a parent of teenagers, is that sometimes parents take their kids to high school and they drop them off and they're like, peace out, we'll see you in college. And they check out of what I think is one of the most important developmental seasons of their life, when they desperately need to feel seen, known, and loved. And we are completely checking out. So that connection, I hope resonates with some people of what our primary vocation is as parents, is to really develop a relationship with our kids. And the social media obviously can be a point of connection, but yesterday our family decided to call an audible, and we ended up going to a baseball game at our alma mater. And it was in fact, we all got in the car and we were like, that was the best day ever. And most of it did not involve a telephone. So it reminded me, it was a good reminder, Kathryn, don't forget to plug back into your kids. You plug into social media, but plug back into your kids. So that's really, I'm glad that you said that, because it's important.
And I like the point that you made, that it actually starts with us too, and how we live it and what it looks like, in our homes too, to help model that for them. And I think it can be, I like your point about attachment as well, that we live in a kind of influencer age. And so often I'm encouraging parents, my goal for you is for you to be their primary influencer, not, Dobie 257 or whoever that is that they follow. That's probably not a real person, so don't Google that, anyone listening. But all of those things are actually fighting for attention and influence in the life of your child. And so if they're more plugged into that than to you, then the person really driving their moral, spiritual, cognitive development sometimes are these other outlets. And so so in our house, we're just really, my kids might be feel a little bit more bored, I don't know, than other kids or less plugged in, but that's worth the sacrifice for us. As a matter of fact, we decided this summer, I've been thinking and kind of contemplating this with other Catholic dads too, about rites of passage in our culture, and what do we do in the West? Because we don't really typically have kind of a lot of those things, and so I think the thing that we've decided to try this summer as a form of both detachment, but also trying something that brings about both struggle and growth together and spiritually is a pilgrimage. So we're going to do the Camino de Santiago with my 13 and 11-year-old, where we get, where mom, we're not going to be able to call home. We're not going to be able to check in. It's just going to be us, in kind of the open fields of northern Spain, and just thinking, praying, and talking together without a chance even for interruption, during that time.
Well, and pilgrimages certainly can happen in France, but they can happen anywhere. I mean, I think that's a good reminder to, like, if you have churches, I think we have one family who's going on a pilgrimage to the churches in their diocese. So they're, like, as a family, taking the next year to visit some of those parishes. So that's good. And that actually leads to my very last, I could ask you a billion questions, but so how does your faith inform your professional life as a psychiatrist? Because I know that there have to be people that you serve who either don't have faith or don't share your particular brand of faith in Catholicism. But how does it inform you as a professional who works with kids who you're trying to help become the best version of themselves and who God has created them to be?
Sure. That's a really profound question. Thank you for asking that. So I'll say it in this way. What we use in psychiatry as our kind of manual for determining, what are the limits between, just being sad and depressed, or what's, being a little bit worried and generalized anxiety, or, obsessional compulsive disorder. And so really our book, our Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, is a compendium of disorders, right? What it doesn't actually give us, though, is what the ordered life looks like. That actually comes from the philosophy, from the theology of the person, right, sitting with the book. So I could, as a psychiatrist, settle for treating symptoms, right, and the relief of symptoms, hopefully that translating into a better life. But I think we all know, even if we don't say it explicitly, that there are things that we do that predispose us to suffer and struggle, sometimes unnecessarily, and how you recommend to people, things that they should consider doing, like spending time together and family dinners, all actually come from a world view that you hold about what wholeness looks like. And so in that way, my faith, this rootedness of, the spiritual and physical, soul and body, and the wholeness that I am trying to encourage in the lives of the families and children that I see, are really shaped by this, right? And I think in many ways that's kind of my anchor in practice. I think there are a lot of streams in the culture, and that could be another long talk about man trying to remake himself in his own image, and sometimes losing kind of the pillars of what does it mean to even be human. And yet we know that people who struggle to find themselves, that also sets them up to struggle with a lot more anxiety or sadness than they otherwise should. So I guess that's a really long-winded way of saying it really is everything. I mean, and that's not a question that I think psychiatrists get asked very often, which is, what is wholeness? How do we reach that kind of fullness of joy? Is there something beyond just feeling less depressed? And the good news is that there is. And so hopefully, people that encounter me will get I'm not feeling depressed anymore, but also we can talk about, all right, now tell me about, are you connected in that faith life that you said that, you confess to some degree, because, if you're not giving full life and breath to that, we know actually that worsens and changes the outcomes for getting better from, depression and anxiety. So I think it informs all parts, even if people aren't hearing me say, you should read Humanae Vitae.
Yes, that is on. I put a bunch of those encyclicals and documents on my list to read during Lent. It's sort of when I give myself permission to read things like that. God, I could ask you a billion more questions, but I won't. So I'll do this. thank you. If people live in Kansas, they're very lucky to have you as a resource.
Thank you.
But obviously, you have a great YouTube channel. You have a great social media presence. So for people that want to connect with you on there, maybe let them know how they can do that.
Sure. I think, all of my handles are the same. So Dr. Mittnell tends to be the way you can find me best. I'm here a lot and probably here most in terms of being on Instagram. But as you mentioned, also my YouTube channel, just / Dr. Mittnell. And then you can see me on kind of other platforms too, which I'm a little less active at, but it does have, it'll all lead you here. The other thing is I do have a newsletter too that people can sign up for. So that way, because I'm often kind of involved in projects kind of here and there, and that way they can stay tuned on all the newest things. So I have 2 articles that are out. One that I did for a Yoto Play, a kind of a toy company, and then another for Masonette, who does kind of children's clothing. And both of them are on sleep, like sleep from infancy to preschool years. And I even actually, in one of the articles, I even talk about what sleep looks like in the womb, that, how our kids come out already wired for the ways that and patterns in which they sleep. So anyway, you're
just setting it up so that we have more to talk about the next time I talk.
Yes.
I'm so glad. So I found you through Sister Josephine Garrett. She's a friend of our family, and yes. I'm so deeply grateful for the connection there. I know that you blessed a lot of people with this, Dr. Larry, so thank you for your time, especially during spring break. What is one way for people who are watching this either live or watching this later, what's one way that we can pray for you this Lent?
Oh, thank you. I think maybe living out and doing more of the theme that I mentioned before is as busy as I am, finding ways to just be silent and to be aware. So I'd appreciate any prayers along those lines. So thank you.
Count on it. No, count on
All
it.
right.
Enjoy your spring break, and thank you for a really blessed conversation. It was a gift. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All
It
right.
was a blessing.
Bye.
Bye.